When we go to the theater as an audience, we are willing to suspend our disbelief. So with this I mean that we're willing to believe that what's happening on stage, it's true within the world of the play. So for instance, if we think about Superman, we know that no human being can fly the way Superman does. Nonetheless, when we're watching a Superman movie or reading a Superman comic book, we are willing to believe that that is possible within the world of the play. So this suspension of disbelief has allowed for theater makers to come up with techniques that help communicate their ideas to the audience in various ways and in fascinating ways sometimes. These theatrical conventions, they are the product of the theater in their particular times in history. So with this I mean that they have been developed in agreement or based on the limitations of theater within the times. So if we think about ancient Greece, Greek theater, it was a theatrical convention of those times to have the actors wearing masks of their characters. And this was so because those theaters in those times were really large, really big, and they were in the open air. So they had to directly address the audience. So for them to not only speak, not only listen, to be able to hear, but also for them to understand who was who. So, and that's why the use of masks. So it was easier for the person sitting in the last row to understand that this was the villain because of that mask. So there are a lot of theatrical conventions. But I'm just gonna mention a few for you to get an idea of how it all works. So first of all, we have what it's called a dramatic irony. Dramatic irony is when we, the audience, we know something that the other characters on stage don't. So this is because we, the audience, we act as omni-witnesses. So we see the whole story, we see that what's happening, and we see what's happening to each character, even though the other characters don't, because they're not on stage or they are not paying the same attention to what's happening like us. So this helps, the dramatic irony helps in creating tension or in creating humor. So for instance, if we think about Romeo and Juliet, in that final scene when Romeo's about to drink the poison, we, the audience, we know that Juliet is not dead, that she's actually sleeping. But Romeo doesn't, and that creates tension. Also, if we think about Twelfth Night and the comedy, and we have Viola disguising herself as Cesario, as a man, with the audience, we can see through that disguise. We know it's Viola disguised as Cesario, as a man. But apparently, the other characters on stage, they don't. And this allows for funny situations to happen. Another way playwrights may use to create dramatic irony is by the use of soliloquies or asides. So soliloquies is when an actor is alone on stage and he's telling the audience how he feels or what he plans to do. And an aside is very similar to a soliloquy, but in an aside we have the other characters on stage, and within the action suddenly one of these characters steps aside and tells the audience a secret or tells the audience something the other characters on stage cannot listen. So all this helps to create dramatic irony. Another technique used in plays is that of a flashback or a flash forward. So this is basically scenes that shows us the past or the future. So when this happens, the plot is usually a non-linear plot. So it means it does not follow a chronological order of events. So the thing about flashbacks and flash forwards, it gives us information about what the consequences of what the characters are doing in flash forwards, or more information about a situation or a character because we're seeing how he was in the past. But the key thing here is that this is very powerful in helping to change the audience's attitude toward a specific character. So if we have a character that for the first half of the play is acting as a villain, and as a bad person, and suddenly we have a flashback of this same villain being a normal, nice person and who's just going through very hard times. Then with the audience, we empathize more with this person and we tend to change our attitude. So we don't hate him or her that much anymore. We basically understand him or her better. Then we have narrators. So the narrators in place, they are used to give extra information to the audience about characters, the plot, the action. But we have two types of narrator. We have a first-person narrator, which is one of the characters in the play. So this is one of the characters who's experiencing what's happening on the play. So, and this character may come to us and by the use of an aside or a soliloquy and tells us something about the action or what's happening, but this character is doing so from his or her perspective of the action. So another thing is that the first person narrator doesn't even have to address the audience. It could be something as simple as a character reading a letter out loud, so giving information to the audience. Then we have a third person narrator, or choric, coming from chorus. So third person narrators, they are detached from the action. So they are not experiencing firsthand what the story. So this is interesting because this third person narrator, okay, he or she will give us extra information, but also this is a proper person or a proper tool that will help us, the audience, relate more with what this third person narrator is saying. So what I mean with this is because this third person narrator is not experiencing the action, with the audience, we feel closer to him or her because he's like us. He's just watching the action and giving his opinion or giving a perspective. So a trick when using a third-person narrator is to have this person speak differently from the actors on stage. So for instance, if we have a play where all the characters are talking in verse, and suddenly this narrator comes and talks to us in a normal voice, with the audience, we feel more close, more related to this narrator, and hence we understand, consciously or unconsciously, we understand that his or her perspective is the perspective of the real world regarding the world of the play.